Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who wants to see you at the next conference you attend, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan, and you are listening to Sports Geek. This is episode 325. In this week's episode, I chat with a returning guest, Josh Barney. He's the CEO of SEAT Conference, and I do want to see you at the next conference you attend. I hope it's at SEAT, or maybe Money in Sport, or other events and conferences that I'll be attending. If you're looking for a speaker, I'm always ready. Just jump up on stage, talk about all things sports business, digital, and marketing. But I'm really just so grateful that networking opportunities like SEAT in Salt Lake City in July are back in full swing. So in this podcast, I'm going to chat to Josh. As always, you can find Sports Geek on all good podcasting platforms, as well as at sportsgeekhq.com. If there's a place you can leave a review, I really do appreciate it. As always, and you can always contact me via all social media at Sean Callanan. You can slide into my DMs on Twitter or send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can use the old-fashioned way, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. And I love hearing from podcast listeners. If you want to have a chat, see how I can help you, just simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call, and you'll be able to book in a time. We'll have a chat and find out what you're doing. On this podcast, I chat with Josh Barney. As I said, he's been on the podcast before when he was working at the Utah Jazz and heading up all of their gaming and esports efforts. And now he is taking on a new challenge at SEAT. For those who don't know, SEAT stands for Sports Entertainment Alliance and Technology. If you've listened to the podcast over the years, you know I have a real fond affinity with SEAT, with the people around SEAT. Loved being involved. We've got a long history with it, first attending in 2011 and participating and speaking at multiple SEAT events around the world. So I really do love the community and the people behind it. You can tell that from the interview I do with Josh here, and I'm really looking forward to helping Josh relaunch it, reboot it, and revitalize it, starting at Salt Lake City in Utah in July. So let's get into it. Here is my chat with Josh Barney, the CEO of SEAT Conference. Very happy to welcome a good mate of mine. He's been on the podcast before. He's now got a new job title. I'm very excited about it. Josh Barney, the CEO of SEAT Conference. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Sean. Always glad to have you here with me.
That's all right. And I'm looking forward to, we've had a few conversations via virtual means. I use Butter. I don't use Zoom anymore. But now we're on the podcast, looking forward in real life because SEAT is back. And before we sort of get into that, and we now, you announced that previously, and I've announced I'll be at SEAT. I wanted to get into, I guess, your SEAT experience, and when you first went to SEAT, and what was your experience of SEAT when you first went. So, do you remember your first SEAT?
I do. It was actually kind of one of the greatest memories I have at my time. So at the time I was with Utah Jazz, I spent 12 years there with them. So 2016 in Las Vegas was my very first one. And some of the things that I was able to kind of bring from memory on that was obviously like the Richard Petty NASCAR experience and that. But that was actually the biggest SEAT conference at that point in time. So I got to be a part of kind of what it was like walking into the Super Bowl for the very first time. And it was kind of a really cool event that way. Then I was in 2017 down in Atlanta and that. So yeah, during my time there with the NBA, I was able to participate like that.
It was fond memories of Las Vegas. I think Scott Kegley and I did burnouts in one of the cars, and I think we both recorded it. So I might have to ask Scott to send that through, and maybe upload it as a reel. But like we were doing donuts in the NASCAR track, and then learning all the ins and outs of ARIA and all the different weaving in Las Vegas. I won't mention getting thrown out of a karaoke bar, but that's just me. And then Atlanta, again, terrific experience. Even if we went to a ballpark and got rained out, but it was still like awesome experience and wanted to see it. You know, we were all geeking out about the tech and all of those kind of things. And so you did get a feel for both the quality of people, the conversations that were had around the different rooms. Were you a single tracker, or did you bounce to different rooms to learn from different tracks?
So I'll use the example of 2016. So at that one, I really was a single track guy, and it was really, from my perspective, is we were getting ready to do a renovation of our arena in 2017. So I had walked in there with an intention and purpose that I needed to find partners for Wi-Fi, an app, the DAS system, our point of sale. So I was really using Seat as that ability for me to go in and network with all of those groups to find out kind of best in practices, where we needed to look for, building the arena of the future. And so that, I had gone in on that one specifically around that. And in 2017, I started to do a little bit more wandering around. So I sat in on a lot of the marketing. Minnesota Vikings actually had a really good presentation in Atlanta that I, sat in, and I remember on that. So yeah, that was, it was more wandering my second year than it was my first year.
But it is a bit that way. You can come with that specific intent of, I've got this problem, or I've got this, I've got this thing that I'm trying to solve. One, I can go talk to different vendors who might be able to solve it, but then also I can also talk to different colleagues in my same cohort, whether they have a tech role or a digital role or a data role, and say, hey guys, how did you solve this? And the openness of the seat attendees and the community that has been built there, is phenomenal. And people are like, oh, this is the product we use, this is the problem we had, this is how we solved it. So how much, you sort of said you went in there with that intent of, I've got to find the right provider and talk to them all. How much was it? Yes, you did. You had those conversations, but then you also went and found out what other NBA teams are doing, or, in a lot of the cases, you talk a lot in your own league and you don't talk to the other sports. You don't know what the baseball people are doing. You don't know what the NFL people are doing, or even better, you don't know what's happening over in Europe or what someone's doing in Australia. Was it a bit of a mix of, hey, I'm going to talk to vendors to find out what they're doing, but also, hey, find out, from different people who are attending?
Yeah. So that was actually one of the components on the initial reason why I got there was the NBA, their IT meetings were tied in with Seed at that. So I already had that component just to interact with the teams that I had within the NBA. But then it was moving into the interactions with like Todd Kaflish, who at the time was with the Red Wings, and that kind of conversation around what they were doing in that space. And then starting to talk to those who were at other teams and leagues outside of that. And obviously that's where I met you at that point too. So it really got me, able to start to have these conversations with the groups that were trying to solve a similar problem to what I was trying to do, but the building may not just be exactly the same. So really great networking type of experience for me. And I have friends, to this moment that I gained, and it was specifically through Seed.
Yeah, definitely. So yes, I was at 16 and 17 in Vegas and Atlanta, and again, had a great time at both. I do remember, I think everyone was wearing Chip Foley T-shirts at Atlanta at the bar, because you just had to have a Chip Foley T-shirt and he would buy you a drink. But that's Chip. I don't think you actually need the T-shirt. But I do remember that. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to 18, which was in Daytona. I was on my Gravitas Esports hiatus, effectively trying to build an esports team, and then obviously 2019 did not happen because of COVID, and it really rocked the conference scene and what was available, and trying to pivot to online. So effectively a lot of conferences went into low maintenance mode and those kind of things. So it sort of brings us to now, how did we get to where we got to? I'd love to, you've told me the story. I'd love you to share with the listeners on how you came to to be in this reboot mode of Seat.
Yeah. So you brought up as well the COVID thing, and COVID, I ended up going into free agency, and made my way out of there, and I was actually going to be attending the 2020 Minneapolis event and had to cancel my plans, obviously, along with everybody else for that. But it ended up that as time went on, and I was still kind of closely related to that space through some of the things I was doing, kept hearing people talking about this gap kind of existing where SEAT was. And Christine absolutely built kind of a fantastic event just specifically because of that. The fact that people want this and were looking for this, and that it was something that, was not existing in some of the other conferences that existed there, just due to kind of the holistic nature of talking about, a venue, how you interact in that space, the pre and post event type of things. It really made SEAT a special spot. And it happened to be this last summer that I was on vacation with my family, had a long drive back home. And about the time I got into the Mojave Desert, I don't know what it is with Mojave Desert, but it inspires people. But I got into the desert and had this thing pop into my head. I needed to reach out to her. So reached out to sent her a text message literally at the next off ramp that we took. A couple days later, we ended up getting on the phone and we're just kind of catching up and talking, and brought up to her, said, what your intention was SEAT. And her world had obviously changed post-COVID, as a lot of people it did, and that there was no longer the bandwidth to be able to bring an event like this back. So I asked her if she would be willing to, allow me to acquire it and then relaunch and bring it back to the community. And she was gracious enough to do that. And it was a really kind of special moment of transition for me to be able to take on kind of the stewardship of this for the next iteration of its life, and bring it back to what it was and take it to the future. So.
It's a terrific story. We won't question, what the cactus said to you in the middle of the desert. Maybe that's something for the when you open, you tell everyone what it did say. But that epiphany is one of the reasons we're back. And like I said, when I said I'm going to be at SEAT this year, as a massive thank you to Christine. For someone I met Christine in 2010. And I felt like it was an off-the-cuff remark after I spoke at a conference here in Australia. She said, I should speak at my conference in LA. And I went, sure. I'd be doing Sports Geek for 9 months. I said, sure, I'm going to be speaking in LA. And just fortuitously, I was doing some work with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And similarly, I said, hey, Christine, I'm actually going to be in LA when SEAT's on. And, I end up on a panel with good friend of mine, Shane Harmon, and we were there with surrounded by all these geeks talking about Wi-Fi and DAS, and there was a $5 penalty every time you mentioned Wi-Fi in that seat, which was quite funny, and the number did rack up a little bit, but then to see it expand to bring in the digital folk, to bring in the CRM folk each year, and like you said, to grow into what it was, into big conference that it was at San Francisco was I think it was one of its peaks, and then Vegas, phenomenal. And the fact that so many people talk so fondly, and like you said, look forward to that like summer reunion every year. Hey, what have you been working on? And I think that's what makes it so different.
Yeah, so many people have, especially once the announcement was made, the phrases of the band's getting back together and, hey, it's the family reunion again. And that fondness that people actually had around this is actually kind of the cool part about this. And those that have attended, you asked me what my memory of it is. Like, all of those people have those individual memories. Like the San Francisco one, it ended up being the softball match there ended up being a huge memory component for a lot of these people. And I've had people ask me, hey, we going to do softball again? And yeah, absolutely we are.
Yeah. And, just a shout out to all the CRM folk who were very bitter about the loss of Team Digital. Somehow my being on the mic at AT&T Park caused some controversy. I don't know how I affected the result from the microphone, but if you've got a good trash talker that can take over the PA system, go for your life. But I know it still sticks in Russell Scabetti's craw, so a shout out to Russell. You've had some of those conversations so far. Like, what have some of those conversations been with previous attendees? The reformation of the steering committees. What have some of those initial conversations and reactions been so far?
Yeah, well, initially, that had to be the kind of the onus that I carried in this one, was getting the message back out. So I was immediately going back into kind of the old term of my Rolodex for my previous contacts, and just kind of reestablishing those connections again. And there's been a few people, like, when I knew what was happening before everybody else, I was sending text messages like over to Brew and at the Warriors and that, and just say, hey, we need to have a phone call. And I get eyes back, and it ended up the announcement. We talked a couple days. He was like, I was wondering what that was. And so initially getting those conversations back in there. So I've been doing my darndest, and I have, 10, 12 phone calls a day where it's just talking to these groups. So, your Brandon McNulty's and all of those, Scott Clegley was another one, getting all of these people just kind of aware that it's back, talking through kind of what my vision for what this is for the future. And we've reestablished all the steering committees now, and we're actively working on creating the content that will be getting announced here pretty quickly. But all of those people kind of excited to be back and really trying to talk about what happened with the world post-COVID and how that affects this space, because there was obviously some major changes that ended up happening that affected not only the personnel at those groups, but how technology was used in those spaces as well. So there's a lot of people excited just from that standpoint of being able to talk about what happened, and kind of doing our post-mortem now on this, and really kind of looking at what the future will be and how we manage kind of this stuff moving forward. So
yeah, I mean, I think some of those steering committee meetings, and for those who don't know, SEAT has a steering committee. And it varies in size, and it's across the tracks. There's a technology stadium venues one. There's one around digital and marketing, and there's one around the CRM, data, BI, analytics, and you get the best from different sports all chiming in, and again, sort of discussing the same. How do we solve the same problems? And again, we've got this great story of, hey, we're coming out of this space. How has our whole industry changed? Some for the good, some for the better. How has technology provided some advantages, and then, hey, what is also coming new that might provide some advantages? So, like, that's pretty much where most of 90% of the content comes from, because it's someone puts a hand up and says, I really want to know how to, and we'll dive into some of those.
Yeah.
But those initial steering committee meetings have been good and well received.
Yeah. Honestly, that's been the cool part about it is, I no longer have boots on the ground in one of these venues. So the content obviously has to come from the community, so it's relevant to what they do on a day-to-day basis. But having them talk, especially through challenges that they face now, like post-COVID, there was a ton of technology that was pushed out in such a short amount of time, and now you have to deal with it. And what does that look like? And people going in and now trying to figure out what the life cycle of how this is in their venues, and how they just interact with people. There's been a lot with that. So from the analytics side, we've been doing a lot of conversations around how to use AI to supplement staff shortages and to augment, kind of the roles that people are doing. So there's some really good conversations that are coming out of this, that are relevant to this moment in time for what kind of people are dealing with. So I'm really happy about kind of the feedback I'm getting, not only internally from these steering committees, but when I talk with brands about it as well, and kind of get their take and get them involved on this, they're very excited about it as well, specifically because they're the ones that are trying to interact in the space as well, and it makes it for a really good relationship like that.
Well, that was the other part, sort of the other side of conferences is the partners and the sponsors that are getting involved. Again, the uniqueness, the collegiality, like the networking, the openness of SEAT as a group. I always found the partners who came along to SEAT were like, SEAT is amazing from a point of you're talking to people who are making the decisions, who want to share, the problems, what, won't, unvarnished feedback of, well, this is what we need, or this doesn't work. How have you found the response from partners, going back to say, hey, SEAT is back. Do you want to be involved? This is what we're building.
It's been really good there as well. And to kind of add to what you said there, one of the amazing components about this too is not only did the technology change, but with, as in my cases, as I was no longer with a sports team, a lot of other people in that same situation ended up at some of these sponsors and brands. So now there's a very unique perspective on this, in that there's people who've been in that realm, and many of them for years at a time, and now they're working on the brand side of it. And so going in and working with the rights holders in there and having that perspective of saying, hey, I know what it's like over on that other side, here's how we can go in and help. So the feedback from the sponsors themselves has actually ended up being really good, because seat was unique in the type of conference that it was, where it actually touched all of the venue and the experience before and post in those conversations. And so it had a unique gap that it filled, and sponsors recognized that as well, that when that event was no longer there, and that networking, that really comes back to what it is sponsors and brands obviously are looking to sell what they do. That's, why they're in business. But at the same time too, they're looking for that same networking that the attendees like as well. And so that's one of the things that we're really trying to address this year and lean heavily into, is that networking aspect of it, because there's a lot of beneficial conversations that will end up happening over those, napkin conversations at the bar or wherever. So we're trying to really craft what we do and have those conversations, especially in the content that we're creating, that has that network feel to it, to where there's a little bit more of a democratized voice. And the director level of some sporting team can be in a conversation with the SVP of a venue, and really try and get that top-down type of view, so that the strategy and the tactical side of that kind of marry up together.
Terrific. And one of the key parts of each conference, and we discuss them in their city name. I talk about Seat Miami, and I talk about Seat Las Vegas and Seat San Francisco. This seat will be in Salt Lake City, which is your hometown. It's not that you didn't want to commute, right? What is the main reason that you wanted to have it at Salt Lake City? Tell people who have never been. I'm like myself, never been to Salt Lake City. Why Utah, and what makes Salt Lake City special especially from a sports and tech point of view.
Yeah, well, just out of selfish reasons was the first part of it. If I'm going to resurrect something, I want to try and make it as easy for myself as possible. And so doing it in a place that I'm already familiar with and that I've got great contacts in, obviously was an easy choice for me. And then the secondary piece of that is Utah is actually in a unique position right now with the amount of tech companies that are coming up and going. We have a sister to Silicon Valley in Silicon Slopes, and Qualtrics is a part of that, which they obviously do a ton of business in the sports and venue verticals. And so there's a lot of these groups as well. We've got Sponsor CX that's located here in Salt Lake as well. There's Track Software that's located here in Salt Lake. So there's a few of these groups that are, building up from here, which gives it kind of a natural feel, like being in San Francisco, where there's actually businesses that are involved in this space here in town. So that was a big part of it. And then people haven't come and actually seen Utah, and those that do tend to travel out in the middle of the winter to go skiing. And there is kind of a majestic, view of the mountains in the winter, but being able to actually be up in the mountains and do hiking and all the other things that come along with those types of activities is really kind of cool in the summertime. And we've got some unique activities. So like our closing night events will actually be up at the Utah Olympic Park at the base of the ski jump hill. So we're actually, again, one of the intentional things I'm trying to do is go back into the sports venues and the entertainment venues to host the conference. So being at the University of Utah in their football stadium for the main part of the conference, but then going to an outdoor Olympic facility was kind of our closing night piece. And I'm really excited about that. Just for being in that space up in Park City. So.
Terrific. I think I need to find an altitude chamber or something and start getting some altitude training. I think that's the bit that's going to knock people about as they come in. And I know I have been to Wyoming basketball, and they have a sign just above the visitors run out where it says how's your lungs, how's the altitude, like, just to get you ready for it. So might need some preseason training, but really looking forward to seeing Utah, getting to experience Utah, and I guess the opportunity for people to, come to see and stay a little bit longer, do some hikes, see part of Salt Lake City is always an option, as a lot of people do. They sort of bookend a vacation around it. What I did want to do, and part of this conversation is sort of fleshing out and teasing some of the things that we're planning. And it really comes down to sort of how I'm pivoting is not the right term, but how I'm best placing where the podcast sits and how I interact with conferences. And last year I did a Sports Geek Amplify series, which was was a change for the podcast, where normally I'm talking to a guest that works in sports and sort of their sports business story, whereas the Amplify series is more looking at a product. How does it solve a problem? How do they help the business? And really pleased to announce that we're going to be doing a Sports Geek Amplify series for Seat. And so it'll be all focused on Seat partners, talking to, getting a preview of what can they deliver, what are they offering, why should you talk to them, what problems do they solve for, really. So if you've, like Josh, when you were going to your first, if you've got that intention of, I need to solve this, that's the whole idea of the series. But then also to give Seat, more length and audience growth, and more than, the time around the conference itself. So I'm really excited to do the episodes. I'll still be me. I'll still be asking the questions that I want answered, that I want my clients answered, that I want, Seat attendees to know, to sort of dive in on how the product works. I'm really excited for it. It's going to be a 6-episode series. Josh, you're out there, I guess, selling the series. One, how's it going? How's it been received? Are we getting pretty close to locking in all those spots?
Yeah. So with the 6 that you've got there, we've actually got 3 that are kind of lined up right now on there. So we're running out of real estate on this one, which is a really good problem to have. Most of the brands initially, and again, this is where COVID has kind of changed the world. There's a real concerted effort by brands when they want to be involved. It's to be involved in content. And podcasting obviously is a very prominent topic with that right now. So when we bring up now in our conversation, hey, we actually have partnered with Sports Geek on this one to roll out a content series, there's an immediate interest. So with that initial announcement that we put out there, we ended up getting some real quick responses on there, and we've got actually calls lined up for the next 2 weeks about this. So
by the time this gets recorded, by the time I'm not trying to hype it up, but I am. By the time this actually gets released, these spots might be gone. So, send Josh an email, josh@seatconference.com. If you're interested, you're more than happy to send me an email, Sean@sportsgeekhq.com, to say, hey, how can I be involved? I'm really excited, one, to do the interviews and sort of dive in, but also to really connect this content with Seat. So, hey, if you listen to the podcast, you might get some secret words that you might need to go tell someone, and there might be some cool surprises, those kind of things. And we'll go as far as the sponsor wants to go. But the idea is, to really help people engage, to know what to go and ask, to know how to be involved in the networking events, all that kind of thing. So, as well as being a really terrific piece of, marketing material for the partners. So, that's what we're going to be doing on the content side, from a podcast point of view, which is what I, believe is my strength. And then also the other thing is also planning some content, which is still being done around the steering committees. But there's a couple of panels that I'm really looking forward to moderate and get some really good friends of mine up on stage. Most of them most likely have been on the podcast before, but it's sort of like a get together. And then the idea of a few other ideas that we're bouncing around, that really excited. But then the other part that I've, we've said it a lot, is that networking, that networking reboot. One thing I found with seats, it is great. It is a great reunion. So you end up going and catching up with the people that you do know, and you go, that's great. But that can form, hey, you just catch up with the people you know. And what I like is, how do we, one, still do that, but then also invite and be welcoming to new, because as much as people will come back to seat, there will be, let's say, there'll probably be 50% of people who've never been to a seat coming to seat for the first time in Salt Lake City. So, what Josh and I are working on are, what are networking tactics? What are ice-breaking workshops? How do we get people in and get them connected? And, a lot, like I say, leave no person behind. And so things like, having a Slack for seat. So when someone says, where is everybody? Some will say, oh, we're all over here. So, I think that's also just as exciting because, like you said, we've both made lifelong friends at a seat. We want to open that opportunity up for other people as well. So
one of those things as well that our website is actually going to do is in probably the next month or so, it will actually transform into more of a community platform, specifically like kind of how you talked, so that there is that ongoing conversation that can happen and people will be able to be connected more easily kind of through that method there. So, yeah.
Terrific. So, so I'll put links to the, a Slack invite in the show notes of this podcast, but seatconference.com is also there, and there'll be a link on there to join the Slack. So that's sort of a little bit of us catching up. What we're going to be doing along with the Sports Geek Amplify series that will be presented by Seat is just us having a regular catch up, because like every time we have a catch up, I'm like, Josh, we should have hit record. We're just two geeks geeking out about the new stuff. So you're going to be a semi-regular guest every couple of months where we're going to come in and say, hey, what are the things you're talking about? What are the things you're talking about with people from a seat? And so what I want to do is just sort of get a bit of a highlight recap of some of the steering committee meetings and what are some of the hot topics that are bubbling at the top. Thank you again to Notion AI that does a really good job of taking the transcript and saying these are the things that was discussed. As someone who didn't go to the 4 a.m. meeting, I really do appreciate that that advancement, being able to open it up, grab the transcript, go, oh, look at that, everything got said. Oh, and I got a mention. That's terrific. What were some of the key, what were some of the topics that jumped out to you that went, oh, I can't wait, like, I'm going to be really struggling to be in two rooms at once, which is what you want. You want to go, there's 3 sessions and I want to go to 2 of them. What was one or two of the topics that jumped out at you?
So one of them that I thought was really interesting fits into kind of, we deployed a ton of tech in a short amount of time, and that one was around QR codes. We see them everywhere now, and it's like, is it too much now, or how do we go in and leverage that to be better with what we're doing? I thought that was a unique one just because they're everywhere now.
Because 3 years ago, everyone goes, they're stupid. And now everyone goes, everyone knows how to use them. So, but are they working? Like, just the fact that we've put a code on that sign, is it being clicked on? Or are we just ticking the box of it's been done? Yeah, it is a really good point, because just because of mass acceptance doesn't mean people are going up and doing it.
Well, and there's a proper way, in that to get that out there as well. I've been in instances where they pop it up on a screen and it's not up long enough for me to get my phone out and scan it. So, some good conversations around that. Other stuff was, obviously staff shortages and some of the things that people are up against for competitive salaries against the tech industry to try and bring them into those teams and that. Some really good conversations that are happening there. AI is obviously, a hot topic out there, and how that can go in and supplement and augment, the tool chest that people are using to get their jobs done. So, yeah.
Yeah, there was a few in the, like, looking over both, because I was sort of like, I like to be in the data and in the digital, and so say, hey guys, well, let's see how they connect. And there was that theme of, one, how can you take AI and, put it, like, it makes perfect sense to data, and hey, what can you do? But then also, like, that staff shortages, how do you get over that stuff? How do you improve your workflows? because I think to me, AI is like a big productivity boost, but it's like, how do you go about using it? Like, and we've already started applying it to our, content workflows. Like, hey, here's a video. Oh, great, here's a video. What's a transcript look like? Oh, what are the edit points for it? And we're like, we just now quiz. In our case, we use Notion AI. We say, hey, what are the key points? What are the edit points? So then you've got really quick feedback to give to an editor to say, I just want these 4 pieces cut. Whereas previously, someone's got to look through 15 minutes of footage and find out where the quotes are. And those kind of things are really, functional. And there's some of the things you do get from C where someone just lays out, here's how I do it. And you're, I'm going to steal that, steal with pride. But then the other bit is there are now tools just coming at us at a rapid rate of pace. And so I think there's going to be, a real conversation on, like, most of the people at Seed have always been, pitched to by, hey, here's a new tool, it can work, all these, like how you make an assessment of a tool quickly, decide whether to use it, roll it out into your system and your team, into your stack. I think that's one that's going to be, the explosion of tools that, now with AI on the box is going to be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, I'll add one more in here. I think that's a relevant one too, and it's what does the future of broadcast look like within sports? With regional sports networks struggling and going under here, like teams are losing that direct to consumer type of model in that through those broadcast partners. So what does that look like? And then from the marketing side, we were talking a lot about some of the supplemental stuff that's third party, like Netflix's Drive to Survive series and what that did for F1. And now they've got full swing in their tennis one, and Apple signing their contract with the MLS to bring a global audience to MLS, and now supplementing content around that. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff now that we're starting to see that's meaningful to those people in the sports and entertainment world that has this kind of hover around it effect that's really, really prominent right now.
And it's unlocking a whole bunch of different assets. Like previously, those broadcast rights were no, you can't use them on these channels. You can't use them on these channels. Whereas, there's streamers or digital only channels are a little bit more open to say, well, we want people to dive in, so we need to tell the story. I mean, I shared Ben Thompson's Stratechery article around the F1 and the NBA and the analysis of that on. You still need to be in this fan development mode all the time, because if your content is locked down in a pay TV cable subscriber, how do you grow fans? So I think that's, again, it's going to be something that all teams are looking at. And then the other piece, I know from talking to you and you coming from a stadium experience, is you're very big on the experience of the customer, the experience of the fan, and what that means, and then all the facets of that. What does that mean, in the walking in the stadium, and how does tech help that, hurt that? Like, what is the right piece? And then, when I start thinking of experience, I'm thinking about the experience from the mobile to the desktop to the stadium. It almost feels like that's a new, it's your track, or it's your lens of seat and how you think it can evolve.
Yeah, so I actually was able to attend the Qualtrics X4 event last week, and Ryan Smith spoke at that conference. And one of the things that he brought up in that was that sports teams and their venues really need to start viewing themselves as an experience company and less as a sports team or venue. And it's true. Back in 2018, I made a comment that wasn't really well received, where I said that we had a technology company that just happened to play basketball. And that really is kind of the same thing now in a different way. Like experience for what we're talking about, most all of these touch points come through technology. The pregame stuff is a technology that we're using through social and all the other ways that we're doing it. The moment they're onboarded, when they're walking into the facility off of Wi-Fi through the app, and that's all part of the technology. And again, we need to start looking at how we use technology to drive revenue versus having it as a cost center that you just have to look at, I got to replace it in 4 years. Here's my budgeting for it. But really look at what you can do to drive the needle inside of your organization using that technology. Because, honestly, we know this technology is meant to make our lives easier. Oftentimes we allow it to complicate our lives and make it worse, but frictionless employee experience coupled with frictionless employee experience really is one of the topics that I'd like to make sure that we cover through this, just due to whatever we're doing with the guest, it's got to be equitable for the employee as well inside of that venue to be able to do their job better and, have that overall better experience from their perspective too.
Yeah. And I do think, if like I said, more people with that focus of customer experience, fan development, fan engagement, but with the multifaceted look at it, not just I'm doing fan engagement, that means I'm growing socials. Like I'm doing fan engagement, that means how do I get them to a game? How do I level them up if they need to be leveled up? Or how do I make sure that they maintain where they are because our product mix is different? That piece and that sophistication. I think it's it's there, but like the more focusing on that, because the days of someone paying and going to every game, or someone sitting down and watching every game on TV, like those days are behind us. And so in 25 years time, the 15-year-olds, what are they doing? Where are they going? How are they consuming your sport? And it all comes down to the experience. So yeah, like I said, I'm in the Slack, and I've seen some of those topics, conversations, and I'm already having those internal conflicts of like, which session am I going to? Or, I really want to hear from that person. So that's good from a content point of view, but also knowing the quality of people that are going to be either having those conversations or having those some conversations after those panels and conversations is just as much.
Well, and that's one of those things as well, is that I'm really trying to see if we can find content that will actually bridge those three tracks. We live in a day and age now where that communication has to be happening between the IT folks, the digital marketing people, and the analytics group. And so looking at content where we can go in and really start to get it to where they have those conversations internal to their organization and they work more in concert. We're really working hard to try and find that content that really has a sweet spot where everybody needs to hear that message as more of a general session, but something that's specific to that job need as well.
Yeah. And like, it is pretty common, like for a team to be sending, some people from the tech place, some people from digital marketing, some people who are the data geeks, the CRM and the data analytics, and they don't often get together. And so they're in this shared experience of one, meeting up with their colleagues, but then also that reconnecting of, oh, that's right, we should be talking about these things, and coming back, they go back with, they're all, full of ideas and full of enthusiasm, which is what you want from a conference, but also they've built some cohesiveness because they've had this one shared experience. See, it was awesome. It was great. We did all these things, but taking that, connectedness now, it cost me business. I must admit, it cost me business because I normally go with the digital divorce counselor. I'm normally the one that's inside the business, bringing them together. So it does cost me business, but it's good because it actually, lifts all of those departments. They all start delivering. You start seeing the wins. I'm very much big of rising tides lift all boats, and it's a really good example. Like, that's what I'm saying. If these departments can work together, there's some really, really good outcomes. So, they're the people who should be attending, the people who are rolling out the tech in your stadium and rolling out the tech and security in your venues, and all of, and looking at all of those new things to go, how does this fit? But then also, how does this fit from a marketing, digital content, fan experience point of view, that that putting the customer in the middle of the experience. And then like I said, the data geeks, how can they look at that data, how can they get more cheeks in the seats, how they can sell more tickets. They're the people that come. And I think the other one is, and it's becoming more and more because more of the commercialization of sport is in the digital and is applying more tech is, some of those savvy partnership folks that have that real analytics focus that go, how can we leverage the tech better? If I'm going to do a digital campaign, how can I sell that digital campaign well? What are they looking for? What are those models? Like some of the ones that when we're talking from a digital point of view, I've really loved. Like I remember, who was it? Aaron from the Clippers talking about that in Atlanta, like saying, hey, here's how we price our assets. And here's, and it took, it wasn't hey, we've decided to change it. It was, here's how we're pricing. It took an 18-month to 2-year discussion with their partners to say, we're going to sell them with this metric and this is how we're going to go about selling them. And can you come on this journey with us? Like, to me, that was really, innovative solution for that problem, but it also took you through the bringing the partnership folk into what they were trying to do, which is it's a big part of what I've applied from a digital to dollars point of view, but bringing in more of those partnership folk that have that that analytics lens. I think I think they're really good connectors between some of those core attendees.
Yeah, amen. Absolutely, yeah. When we get everybody kind of understanding, especially from the partner side, if the partnership teams can start to find the right partners that match objectives to not only the infrastructure but the marketing, and then use the data that they're pulling through that. I mean, now we're moving in a direction that feels intentional and feels like there's purpose. That's what has to happen. We're in a world now where budgets are tighter, and obviously we've talked about staff shortages and the difficulty finding team members to join, and that. So the more we act with an intention in what we do, and the more we're in concert with each other, we're actually going to be better at what we do.
Yep. And I did stand up there at Seat Dallas saying, I want digital to be the number one driver for revenue for sports by 2030. And that's how it happens. It happens by the digital folk smashing it, the tech folk rolling out great tech, and the analytics folk being able to say, this has terrific value. And then nothing gets, gets your commercial folk excited with, hey, there's something I can go and sell that people want. And so that shift, I think, continues to happen, continues to grow. So I guess lastly, July 14, 15, seatconference.com. That's where people go so they can register, purchase their tickets, all at seatconference.com.
Yep, made it a one-stop place. So as we continue to roll out our announcements and content, there will be components of that show up not only if you sign up for the newsletter, but they'll pop up on the website as well. So you'll be able to get all the information you're looking for there, and then right at the top it says buy tickets, and so you can go through register for the conference up there. You can buy tickets not only for you but for all of your teammates as well, and then assign them out to who you want through that same platform as well. So
someone can just go in and register. I want four seats, and they're just pretty much, and you just say, well, who are the 4 people turning up? And you've got their details, and they can swipe a credit card, go through the whatever billing mechanisms they need to sign up. How much is a ticket? May as well tell people, because people might be sitting there wondering, walking around the lake or something, asking.
Yeah, we wanted to go in and make this as accessible as we could, so we put the price point at $4.99 to make it to where, like I said, the budgets are tight and that. So make it at a price point where people can come in, get the feeling of coming back to the family reunion, and become a part of the community and the family that Seed is.
Well, terrific, Josh. Like we will talk before then, but really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I'm looking forward to heading to Salt Lake City. I wasn't joking. I think I will have to find an altitude chamber to be ready. But I don't know if they'll let me take a beer into the altitude chamber, because that's what I'm really worried about having one beer at high altitude. But I will make sure I'm ready. Josh, please everyone go check out Seed Conference. Josh, where is the best place for people to connect with you, reach out to you? What are the best places to connect with you on the internet?
LinkedIn is actually the easiest one right now. I'm on Twitter. It's Spartacus with an interesting spelling there. So it's SPRTAKUZ. Because I lead the fight just along with everybody else. But LinkedIn is the easiest one. So you can find me out there, and love to get conversations going around either attendance or if you want to participate. There's just a ton of opportunities to create some cool moments for people. So.
Terrific. Go to seatconference.com, reach out to Josh at seatconference.com, because guess what? Email still works. Thanks, Josh. See you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Why not book a Pick My Brain session with Sean Callanan? Go to sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain.
Thanks again to Josh Barney. You can reach him on LinkedIn. Very easy to find him, Josh Barney. Or you can reach him with his gamer tag. That is his Twitter handle, Spartacus, SPRTAKUZ, as we would say in Australia, or Seat Conference on Twitter as well, or Josh at seatconference.com. Go to seatconference.com, check it out. The content will start loading up soon. The steering committee members, as we discussed, are starting to formulate some of those ideas for panels and discussions. And the good thing is they're coming from the coalface, people who are working in digital, working in data, working in technology and venues. What are the problems are they facing? So that's one of the reasons I love going to SEAT. And I know if you haven't been before, trust me in saying it's an amazing conference and one well worth going to. And then additionally, if you're interested, if you've got a sports technology solution that wants to reach the sports business market, that wants to reach people in digital, in technology, in data and CRM, then that's exactly what the Sports Geek Amplify SEAT series is going to be about. Why does it work? We're going to release some content prior to SEAT. You're going to learn, both the SEAT attendees and my audience are going to learn about your product, how it gets used. And the thing is, I just go into sports geek mode. But a lot of the times my clients will say, hey, there's this new tech. Here's a solution. We don't know. Can you go and evaluate it? Can you go talk to them? Can you go find out what it is? And I just literally become, take the persona of my client and ask the questions that you would ask. And that's pretty much what I like to do in the Sports Geek Amplify series. You can go back to Series 1, where I talk to a bunch of different companies and really focus on the product and how it serves, how it helps, how it saves time, how it saves money, how it makes money. So if you're a business that does offer something to the sports industry, especially on the sports tech side, please get in touch with Josh. We'd love to have you involved with SEAT and love to have you part of the Sports Geek Amplify series that we're going to do around SEAT. And, your marketing team will get premium content. You will get the video. You'll be able to share the episode with your partners in whatever way you would like. And I'm a marketer, so I want to make the best results for the partners that are working with SEAT around the Sports Geek Amplify series, but I also want to make it work for the customers. Like, it only works if it's win-win. So stay tuned. It's going to be coming out, like I said, prior to SEAT. And if you listen, there may be a few little nuggets there. There might be some secret code words, those kind of things, to enable you to get some extra access and some extra goodies around SEAT. So really looking forward to it. Like I said, if you've got any questions about SEAT Salt Lake City, please reach out to Josh at seatconference.com. Or, like I said, I can't talk highly enough of SEAT as a conference, all the people around it. I've been talking to a few different people that have been on steering committees over the years. Excited to get the band back together, so to speak, but also excited to welcome new people in and really help Josh grow and really push the sports technology industry forward across multiple verticals. That's it for this week on Sports Geek. I really do appreciate you taking the time and listening. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Don't miss out on the latest news and updates from the sports industry. Sign up for the Sports Geek News email newsletter today and stay informed on the latest trends, insights, and analysis from the world of sports. Sign up at sportsgeekhq.com. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. For more resources, go to sportsgeekhq.com.